Hello, my name is Eric Torres, and I am going to share with you my presentation over my research study, which was the 10-2 strategy and its effect on student engagement and student attitudes. So, the purpose of my action research project was to observe if implementing a focus note taking strategy known as the 10-2-2 affects student engagement and also evaluate their attitudes towards the strategy. And the participants of this action research were my fifth hour. Usually, on average, is between 5 to 8 students in the class. And with my prediction, I do predict that implementing the strategy will impact or affect student engagement in the classroom. And also, I would like to evaluate their attitudes, and I do predict that they will have positive attitudes towards the strategy. The design type for this action research is a single measurement design. So I will be implementing the strategy in a class period, and I'm going to pretty much measure their attitudes, and I'm also going to be doing observations to see how their engagement was in class. This next portion is the research-based support for change. Pretty much, I started out broad with this section. So, what I want to start with is chunking in general. And for this, I looked to Robert Marzano. Robert Marzano designed chunking as a teaching strategy that allows teachers to present information in small, digestible pieces. And he also mentioned a teacher must identify critical pause points so that way you can allow students to interact with the information being taught. You can do that by having your students talk to one another, see what kind of information they both understand, and you can also do like little self-reflection notes. Students must have a moment to reflect about new information, and also this provides a great moment for you as a teacher to monitor and check for understanding. Moving along with this, another individual by the name of Ashman provided some best practices on how to implement a proper chunking strategy. He recommended that you do about 10 minutes of lecture or chunking, and then do the next part, which is the chewing part. Your chewing activities should be about 2 to 5 minutes. And then with the chewing or the processing part, you need to have some type of really good processing activity. He mentioned you can do something like a think, pair, share, partner discussions or table discussions, class discussions, or you can do individual journal reflections or have students do that. The next one I thought was a pretty good article was called, it was mainly about a rule called the 10-minute rule by Debelle. Debelle pretty much goes into the chunking again, and he mentions like if you are talking over 10 minutes, you got to stop and you have to let students process what you're just teaching them. Because if you do not stop after 10 minutes, it all of a sudden becomes information overload for the kids. So again, he goes into you can do these here chunking type of strategies like 10 and 2, chunk and chew, or the 10-2-2, which was the subject of my research. And he also further goes on and he explains that by doing these here strategies and by following the 10-minute rule, you are providing the student headspace, which means to provide headspace to students, you give them that moment to process the information that you just taught, and also gives them a moment to ask questions if needed, allows them to engage with their peers, all while not feeling overwhelmed about what you just taught them. And then moving along here, Dale, he provided some information about the benefits and drawbacks of these chunk and chew activities. So the benefits of it is that chunking, keeping it within that 10-minute time frame, it is a great way to break down content, especially if you're doing pretty complex stuff. And also with the chewing, it gives that opportunity for students to manage the information or manipulate it, or even engage with your peers to kind of like see what each other learned. However, there are some drawbacks in which he identifies. Chunking is completely teacher driven. It is not student driven whatsoever. It's all teacher giving information within 10 minutes or so. The chewing, the 2 to 5 minute time frame it gives for chewing, it may not be enough time for students to process information. This is something I also did kind of like witness when I was doing this myself. Maybe those students need maybe 5 minutes or maybe 7 minutes to actually interact with the information and process. Avid's 10-2-2 strategy by McKay, uh, he actually goes in more depth about the Avid strategy 10-2-2, which is what we're talking about. And he goes into that it is 10 minutes of chunking, 2 minutes of peer interactions, and 2 minutes of reflection. But what I thought was pretty interesting too is that he brings up the very probably like the more important part of this whole strategy is the very last 5 minutes or so of class, because that gives you as a teacher the opportunity to clear up any information or any questions that students may have that need clarification. And also, it gives you that moment to really check in with your kids to see if they understood the content. Um, then I held my own interview with a Avid facilitator. I wanted to get an actual Avid facilitator's perspective of the 10-2-2 strategy, and this person actually taught it in our building. And and I actually sat in on his class, and so we had a very informal interview, and pretty much he was talking about how he notices that student engagement is pretty high when you implement the strategy. Like, he notices a lot of students are actually engaging, they're talking, they seem to like to discuss the content that they just learned with their peers. And also, and I thought it was interesting, he mentioned that they seem to retrieve the information better because you have these couple moments where they are actually like dealing or working with information. And so I thought that was pretty interesting to add into that about what he said on that. So the data collection on this, the participants were my fifth hour U.S. history class, and they are 10th graders, and on average I have 5 to 8 kids in class. Some of the materials that we did need were obviously student notes. I needed to have access to a computer, internet, even at times a cell phone, because you can put the Google form as a kind of like a button on your phone. I needed to have a Google account so that way I could access Google Forms. So the way that the procedures worked for the data collection, obviously I needed to introduce the kids to the 10-2-2 strategy so that way they know what to expect when I'm telling them, hey, 2 minutes of self-reflection, write down what you remember. And also I needed to model how I wanted their discussions to go. During the 10-2-2 moments when the lecture was going on, I had to conduct observations onto the Google form so I can write down exactly what I was seeing in action. And this happened usually between 10 to 3 times in the class period. And student surveys were done at the end of the week, and they were done on Google Form as well. And that was to collect my quantitative data. So the data analysis, quantitative data. I got the results for that, and let's see, it's kind of a little bit scattered everywhere. But one of the questions were, I feel that the 10-2-2 strategy kept me alert. 3 was pretty much students kind of felt like maybe. So from 3, 4, and 5, most students felt like the strategy kept them alert. For this one, how well did you like the strategy? Again, 3 was a maybe type of answer. So from 3, 4, and 5, most of the students felt like they liked the strategy or were in favor. The qualitative data, this is just a sampling of what I wrote, and I thought it would be pretty nice to add this. But I really liked the qualitative data because you can see in the notes that students were actively engaged and they seemed positive. versus what the quantitative data provided. So the whole analysis of the project is here. 71% of the students favored the strategy. 57% of the students felt the strategy kept them engaged. 99% of the students felt the strategy helped them remember information, which I thought was very impressive. And 43% of the students felt the strategy is good to use in class. And again, 57% were unsure. So that was kind of like that maybe response if the strategy should be used again. So, what I would like to do with this data is obviously I would love to share it with the Avid team since they are the ones that taught the strategy. I would love to share with them the results so that way they have some data to support what they teach. I would love to share with the SPED department because I feel like with our kids, this is a great way for our kids to help retain information, especially if they're always using it during this 10-2-2 strategy. And I would also like to share the results with the administration team because I know they are always, having to make decisions about programs and Avid and other stuff. But I feel like this would back up Avid, the administration's use of having Avid because of the data on how the strategy helps students in class. So again, that was my action research on a 10-2 strategy and its effects on student engagement. And I greatly appreciate you guys watching this and have a great day.